Hello, friends, and welcome back to Stories About Entitled People. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss a new video every single day. Here we go. Pyramid scheme scammer ends up paying in the end. So about 6 or 7 years ago, I was trying to enlist in the military. I ended up not joining, but that's a story for another time. At this point, I was led to believe I was about 4 months away from leaving for boot camp. I was running out of savings and needed a part-time job for some spending cash while I waited around. So I did what any enterprising 20-something would do and searched Craigslist for jobs. I normally hate sales jobs, especially those based on commissions, but I figured it'd be a great way to earn some extra cash short-term. Found a few job listings that looked promising and put out some applications. A few days later, I get a call from David. David was opening up a new store and needed associates. He liked my resume and asked if I'd be available for an interview on Friday morning. I was very upfront with him and let him know that the distance was a bit more than I'd normally drive for a retail job and asked what he was offering for an hourly rate to see if it was worth the drive. He told me that they were planning on offering an hourly rate in the mid-teens, along with commission. So that seemed like an okay deal, and I agreed to be there Friday at 8 a.m. So Friday arrives as a cold, rainy day. I wear a nice shirt and tie. I drive in heavy traffic to the address David provided. I knew the area from a previous job and eventually found the strip mall I was looking for. However, I'm not seeing any signage for the company name that was listed. There is, however, one empty space with no signage and 2 people inside. Okay, maybe they haven't gotten the store set up yet. No big deal. I'd arrived early, knowing how bad traffic can be in the area, and while I was in my car, I witnessed a young lady in business casual dress remove a sign from the window stating, "Retail space for rent, call 1-800 blah blah blah." Okay, a little weird, but maybe it's the first day in the space. So I walk in about 5 minutes early, and immediately my BS detector goes from yellow to the highest level black watch plaid. The tables are simple plastic folding chairs, the kind college kids would buy for beer pong while on a shopping trip at Target. The walls are plastered with laminated charts featuring tons of dollar signs, smiley faces from stock photos, and an organizational chart showing an all too familiar shape. A pyramid. Yeah, damn it. All right, might as well have some fun for a while to wait out traffic going home. So the young lady in the dress approaches me and introduces herself as Cindy. She welcomed me to company name and asked me to have a seat. She sat at her desk, another plastic table, and pretended to go through paperwork. However, she was really just shuffling papers around. So we get to chatting, and I ask her how long she's worked for David. She says she's been his secretary for about 6 months, and that I'm gonna love it here. Eventually, a guy walks out of the back office, early 30s, clean cut, wearing an ill-fitting suit from JCPenney's. As he's walking over, all smiles. Cindy says, "Oh, Dennis, our newest recruit is here." The guy stops in his tracks and gives her a cold stare. "It's David, Cindy. We've been over this." He turns back to me and gives his brightest, hard-to-find good help these days smile. David sits me down and welcomes me, saying they're going to start with a group interview and has me sit down in a circle of chairs. Eventually, more people come in and sit down. David gets up and begins to thank us all for coming. He tells us about an exciting new opportunity from Cutco. He pulls out a set of knives and explains how with this company we can make as much money as we want, all while setting our own hours. He even pulls out a textbook saying how this company's revolutionary tactics have even been featured in college textbooks. He opened to a page, his hand covering parts of it, making sure we can all clearly see the words Cutco in large letters on the page. Sad to say, a lot of the other interviewees were very impressed by this. One pregnant girl seemed very excited that she could work around her pregnancy and upcoming birth. David was going on and on about how much money he's made and how hard workers will rise to the top quickly. At this point, David said he needed to take a quick phone call and gave us 5 minutes to have some coffee, chit-chat, whatever. As he stepped away, he left his college textbook behind him. Oops. So I picked it up, found the earmarked page, and read. As I thought, it was all about pyramid schemes, and it had Cutco as one of the largest examples. It goes on to talk about how these are essentially scams, not economically viable, etc., etc. So I decided to share this with all the group. I explain how pyramid schemes work and how he's just scamming us. They seemed incredulous, so I said when David gets back to ask him about what we needed to pay to get started. That finally got everyone to realize what was going on. So David walks in a few minutes later, and one of the girls in the group asked David what we need to get started. Well, all you'll need is your first set of knives to demonstrate. You can sell that on directly or have them order one and keep that as your demo kit. Doesn't matter. We just have to pay the startup fees for it. That's when all hell broke loose. One kid started to get up and tell him to go F himself, saying he's wasting our time and that he's an a-hole for trying to pull this crap. The pregnant girl's crying because she thought she'd finally found a place that would allow her to work despite being pregnant. David is clearly confused and flustered and asking who told him all this. When it becomes apparent that I'm the wrench in the machine, David gets upset and starts telling me to leave. People are yelling at David, David's yelling at me, Cindy's trying to tell everyone she never met David before today and didn't know what this bullcrap was. Eventually, we all walk out, leaving David behind. As I'm walking to the door, I see, leaning against the wall, the sign that was in the window before. Retail space for rent, call 1-800-blah-blah. As I get into my car, I dial the number. Eventually, I get through to a person and ask about the property for rent at the location of David's company. The nice lady on the phone apologized and said they just leased that property out. I asked if she knew how long the lease was for, as I was really interested in the property. She said she wasn't sure, they hadn't done the official paperwork yet. They were on their way to the space to sign everything with the leaseholder in a few hours. I told her everything that had happened to me and about David using the space for a pyramid scheme. She got extremely upset, saying this stuff happens all the time in the industry. They'll go to sign, and last minute the leaseholder will decide to opt out after using it for some fly-by-night operation. She thanked me for the info, and I thought that was the end of it. But I was wrong. A few weeks later, I received an email from David telling me how I ruined his life, about how the property management found out what was going on and weren't refunding his down payment on the space, saying he violated a clause in the paperwork he signed to hold the property. How he knew I was the one who called because I'm a terrible human being, etc., etc. Now he was out thousands for the space and supplies, how he only wanted to give us jobs and help us. It was a long, very angry email, with several things said about me and my mother. So I called 1-800-blah-blah again, spoke with the same lady I did before. She was very interested in an email from David where he essentially admitted to what he was trying to do, said it would help them in all their legal proceedings. And don't you know, I was more than happy to send that email along to her. Her lawyer said it should be an open and shut case at that point. I like to think I'm a helper. And our next story. Landlord advertises all of our company's equipment for sale to our competitors. Best follow our eviction to the letter. I work for a leisure company. Think soft play, indoor soccer, laser tag, can't be specific. Prior to lockdown, managers and the big bosses were negotiating the renewal of the lease on one of our parks. Things were going mostly smoothly. However, the landlords were difficult to contact. Then 2020's crap hit the fan. All of our sites were closed, and everything was thrown into a mess. Negotiations began to slip down the priority list. Nobody thought the landlord would push an eviction for an expired lease during this period, especially with it still getting rent despite the site's closure and the closure of every business and restaurant in the immediate area. We were wrong. A few days ago, we received a letter saying we had 7 days to leave the premises and take everything with us. We're reminded that anything left in the building after 7 days will become the landlord's property. That line is very important. Now, a lot of construction goes into installing our equipment into a new building, which makes emptying one even harder. At a lockdown with no staff and most businesses shut, it meant that saving much of our assets would prove to be extremely difficult. To lose a profitable site and all of its assets is definitely a blow to our company, but here's where it gets worse. A few days into our 7-day eviction, we find out that the landlord has been advertising our park to our competitors. But he isn't offering just the building, he's offering all of our stuff pre-installed. Ready to go, just needs rebranding. The landlord has evicted us from the property in an attempt to increase rent and make a solid profit from our equipment installed because he thinks we won't be able to empty the park. We were furious. We were told we had 7 days to move everything we owned out of the property. So that's what we did. Local businesses from all around offered up free space to store our things. A few people came back out of lockdown, and they all spent the rest of the week removing, selling, or destroying everything that was related to us. We didn't even leave light fittings. In every other site vacation we've seen, we always end up leaving thousands of dollars worth of disco lights in the ceilings because they're too hard to get. We leave most of the construction in, as well as things like the bars and kitchens that all stay intact, recognizable as what they once were, but not in this building. We ripped up the flooring we installed, tore down the walls that were not part of the original structure, wooden walls to divide up the space, ripped apart our manager's offices, and removed all the artwork and lockers. The landlord now has every new deal he's been making dead in the water. A large renovation bill to install new flooring, etc., or a company willing to do it themselves like we were. Lockdown has been extended another 4 weeks, so he has at least another 4 weeks without rent. We were paying, and won't have any potential buyers. Silver lining, the assets we got out of the site, fridges, TVs, equipment, food tables, have all been sold, and the lack of rent and additional income has helped the business and paid staff wages. Here's what happened next. We handed in the keys, and it was probably the quickest handover we've ever had. The landlord clearly didn't want to make any kind of conversation, and there was definitely an elephant in the room. But he definitely said nothing about the lack of our equipment. Complications did arise when we went back to get various deposits, but he had no case to withhold the deposits from us as the building was in excellent shape. We'd conducted much of the maintenance work ourselves, so the building was in a significantly better condition than we found it. We also cleaned up 99% of the rubbish and dirt from our demolition crusade, so he couldn't bill us for cleaning. A very minor bit of pressing from our legal team meant that we received everything owed back in full. The building is still vacant, and as of yet, we don't know of any potential buyers. At this moment in time, our company is still standing despite the pandemic closures and lack of business. Staff are all still employed and doing well. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video to the end, and I'll see you in the next one.